Better Business Results. My name's John Witt, and I'm your host. I work with business owners, executives, and sales professionals in 30 minutes or less each week to generate better business results. I'm the owner of BusinessWhitt, a published author, and a senior leader in the Focal Point International Coaching Organization, where we have over 180 coaches on all 7 continents. Albert Einstein's quoted as saying that compound interest is the most powerful formula in the universe. If you were to improve your business 0.1% on a daily basis, you would be almost 24% more effective and more efficient at the end of 1 year. You too can harness the power of compound interest for your business, generating 3 action items each week. That's what we're here to do. Let's get started. Welcome to Better Business Results. My name's John Witt, and I'm your host. Today I'm welcoming Gray Farley. Gray, you're the president of FTL Enterprises. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Gray and I know each other from the golf course and some church activities, and want to tell you I really appreciate you joining us on the show today and sharing some of your experiences, because you've got just a really vast degree of experience on the business front, and I think this is what we're really going to be able to share to our audience today.
That is because I'm old, John.
I didn't go down that path.
Okay.
I didn't go down that path, but you only get a vast degree of experience with some extra years, maybe. I guess that's it. But you look good, so that works out. Okay, so starting off, share a little bit about FTL Enterprises. Maybe talk a little bit about the company you had before, and you sold that, and you started FTL. Share a little bit with us in the audience.
Okay, well, basically after getting out of the Navy, I went to work for a company called Ingersoll Rand, which is as a sales engineer. And I learned the industrial tool industry, which, long story short, when I was 35 years old, had the opportunity to become a distributor when they were transitioning from direct sales to distribution, and was able to build that business up to a full-size industrial supply business, which sold their equipment along with other types of tooling and equipment. And it's in that time that called on most of the industries, especially here in Los Angeles, the refining and power generation markets in this area. And that's where I came up with the idea, which really started FTL Enterprises, which was to develop a retaining device for impact wrenches to hold industrial sockets on. And it was called the Ret Ring. And we're now in our 4th series. I've been in this for about 30 years. Even though I sold my business in 1998, I've continued to run FTL Enterprises to sell Ret Rings.
Yeah, so you sold the distribution business.
Yes.
In 98 for a fairly healthy amount. But some of the things that you learned there, and this is what we were talking about a little earlier, is that there were some issues people were experiencing with some of the machinery, some of the tools, right? And it's not just your tools, it's every tool. It's just part of the industry, right?
Right.
And you took it upon yourself to go and develop some solutions to solve those problems, and that's what the Ret Ring does.
That's exactly right. Basically, it's going from when I encountered this in most of the areas, they were a 2-piece system with a single steel pin and a rubber O-ring to hold on a socket. I developed a 1-piece device so that the ring could not ever come out. And it was a sure way to help the safety of that industry, in which the record in the last 35 years has been impeccable. So I'm very proud of that.
We're going to touch on that again in just a little bit. But so talk about a little bit about who benefits the most from your products and services.
Well, obviously it's my customers, who are mostly millwrights and people in the field who are using the tools. They're the ones that are exposed in very tough conditions. They're using very heavy duty equipment, large bolts and threaded fasteners, and they're very tough conditions, so that they're using these large impact and power driven tools to take bolts off and to put them on a daily basis in the field. So my device holds that socket on the impact wrench as they use it, so that it does not let the socket come off.
Okay, and so the problems that these industries have, and I think you mentioned the refining industry. What other major industries?
Power generation, large equipment manufacturers. Anybody who makes large equipment. If you're GE making a locomotive, you have a lot of large bolts and fasteners on.
Okay, and you said something 3/4 inch minimum size. What's the biggest?
3/4 inch is the smallest. There's 3 square drive categories. There's 3/4 drive, there's 1 inch drive, and 1.5 inch drive portable impact wrenches. and sockets. There's probably hundreds different of sizes that goes on.
Okay. So a 3/4 inch size, how big of a bolt or nut is that?
It's 3/4 inch in diameter.
Okay. So I was thinking that the actual drive.
Well, the
piece.
square drive is also on those tools, mostly 3/4 drive
Okay.
too.
All right. Fair
So
enough.
it matches the square drive on the tool. Kind of matches the threaded diameter of the bolt.
Okay.
Just because you need more beef to drive those equipments. So that's kind of a simple way to do it. But there's all kinds of the nuts that go on these threaded fasteners are much bigger. They can be across the flats on a 3/4 tool going from 1.5 inches up to 3 inches.
I think that's the question I was trying to ask. I didn't do a very good job of doing that, but that's fine because I wanted to have a visual of what size this stuff was. And so the challenges that you were faced with or that you were heard about, right, when you were finishing up selling the one business and starting the new one, what were some of the challenges that your customers were experiencing?
Well, both as a sales engineer for Ingersoll Rand and also in my own business, which continuously customers would have difficulty with holding the sockets on. The steel pins would come out, they would hurt people, they would lose eyes, they would lose fingers, and they would actually be permanently unable to work anymore. So there's a lot of workman comp industries, there's product liability implications for the manufacturers of the tools that they did not have a safe piece of equipment. So there are a lot of lawsuits and settled lawsuits that they did not want to go to court, which would then establish the fact that this was not a safe system and kind of ruin their market.
Yeah, well, it could, those kinds of things could.
So the interesting thing today, Ingersoll Rand puts one of my Ret Rings in every impact tool that's sold, 3/4, 1 inch, and 1.5 inch drive. FTL's Ret Ring is in every one of those as the recommended way to hold on a socket.
And so what you were telling me, I mean, obviously this is your tool, your product solves this problem with this pin flying out and obviously creating major damage. How does it do that?
Well, basically, when you operate a tool, sometimes when you're testing the tool, you're running the tool, the RPMs of these tools can go up in excess of 5,000 RPMs. And as you know, it creates tremendous centrifugal force. So that you have anything that's not steel on there, like a O-ring, it will open it up. You can see it on high-speed movies.
It just starts to expand.
It will expand tremendously. And you can actually see the steel pin flopping back and forth in these high-speed films. So if anybody would see one of these things before they operated, they would never use that system.
Right.
But obviously, the people in the field never saw that. They just used what was provided to them.
And so your tool deals with this.
It's
expansion.
one piece.
It's one piece.
So, and the way we put it on the socket, the way we had to put it on, we had to put it on the anvil first, and then put the socket on, then come in and feed it in. It have to be bent to feed in. So the way it's installed is different too. So it had to be. We had to figure out a way to do that in a simple way, and now it's a very established.
Okay,
method.
and now you've got a system and a process,
Yes.
and you've been doing this for a long time. All right, so that's a great story. Tell me the biggest success. You were mentioning it earlier.
One of the big parts in the industry is establishing this product line is when DuPont had several accidents down in their Louisiana process plant where they make plastics, and they came to me and they inquired about our product and I told them about it, and they were interested in running a test on all the established retention systems that were available in the marketplace. So they inquired of everybody in the socket industry, in the air tool industry, provide samples of products, and there were about 10 of them at the time, different ways to do this. And after testing in the labs under extensive tests, it proved that our system was the safest system, and they were recommended to all their facilities. They could not use any other product for retention of sockets except the Ret Ring.
Well, that's a pretty strong endorsement.
Obviously it was a wonderful day when I got that.
Yeah, that's a tremendous endorsement. And then the hidden benefit, right? Obviously we've knocked out a lot of safety issues. We've probably increased productivity because people aren't getting hurt. But what do you think the hidden benefits are?
Well, obviously the biggest benefit is when your customers come to you, especially early on, and say, "This is the greatest thing. This really helps me and solves my problem." It's a great joy when you finally, and it took maybe years after we come up with it, to get that kind of response from customers and a kind of acceptance and saying we're going to use this product. Obviously, after that, it's being able to have the financial success of of a business that manufactures and sells this to the marketplace and having continual success and repeat business from people who've used it.
And your customers,
they're the ones that reward.
Well, at some point, they know that they've got the best thing going on in the business,
That's
right?
right.
So there's a whole lot of comfortability. They're not have to worry. They don't have to be concerned. They've probably got other worries and other concerns, but they're not having to worry about this because they know they've got the right thing. They're very certain. So those are some of the more hidden benefits that people have just from being able to use your product and service.
That's right.
Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about your business and how you've got it and where it's going and some of the successes that you've had. The second part of the show here is really all about your business and where you're going with that. And at this point here, we talked about it, and you've shared that succession planning and how do I move this business forward. At some point, you're not going to run this business anymore.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's just the way it is.
Either because the customer decides not to buy it, or that I'm not around here to run it. One of the two.
Right. And you're thinking in terms of a legacy type business,
Yes.
passing it on to family members.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had several family meetings over the last 5 years, and while we had the opportunity to sell the business, and certainly it would be a good business to sell, there'd be better benefits of operating the business and having our family, if something happens to me and my wife, to have them operate and enjoy not only running the business, but maybe taking it to a new level that I wasn't able to achieve.
Sure. They could expand on it, maximize it.
Absolutely.
And grow it even. And I know you mentioned something about maybe Asian markets and some worldwide distribution opportunities.
Asia's been the toughest market to penetrate. I think there's a language barrier. I have a website that I think works well in Australia and Western Europe and even in Africa. But Asia has been a real pragmatic. There's a huge market there. And right now they still on the old system of for years, safety is not maybe as
it's not as high of
a consideration, and maybe the cost of labor isn't something, so they can wrap tape around their system and do other things, taking the time to do that to avoid buying my product.
Wow. Well, unfortunately, and China doesn't have the greatest human rights record either, right? Not that they're the only one out there like that, but that's a true.
But even in Japan, where they have high labor costs and more safety conscious, it's been a barrier.
It's a
very tough market.
Yeah. Okay. What I thought I'd do is share the 4 stages of learning, because from a learning perspective, this applies to everything that we do. And I wanted to talk about it and see if we put it in perspective for your legacy business. So it's not like you've transitioned a business to family before. Transitioning a business to family members has all kinds of interesting dynamics, right? As opposed to selling it to somebody that you don't know and they're going to take it and run it and do with it. You have a family. You have concerns about how that's going to work out, and you have 3 kids, right?
That's right.
And are all of them married?
They're all married, and
Yes.
I have 6 grandchildren. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot there that needs to be taken.
They all live in
place.
Orange County too,
and they're all in Orange County. So, all right. So what I thought I'd do is let's talk about the 4 stages of learning, and then we'll talk about this thing called the stack, which is areas of learning that we could go to. Because, at this point, maybe there's probably not. Well, you don't know. Is there anybody that's really ready and primed to take over? Or is this something that needs to be nurtured?
All of our children have careers and successful careers, and very busy raising children, and so time is very stressed on all of them. It's a very time-consuming raising a family, making a living, and doing all the things you do as a young family. So obviously they're all willing to take a part, but and we're handing over small parts as we can to them to learn something about it. So in case something happens to me, at least they won't be totally foreign for what I'm doing.
Yeah, and so figuring this out is a little bit of a case by case, step by step basis. So anyway, let's go through the 4 stages of learning. Okay. This was. Maybe it was demonstrated most aptly by Abraham Maslow, who, hierarchy of needs psychologist. And there's a lot of people that played a role in this, but his name's kind of been attached to it so much, right? So the 4 stages of learning, the S on the screen represents the learning curve, right? It's not a straight line. It never is in most anything, right? But the first stage of all learning is a stage called unconscious incompetence, and this is that area where you don't know what you don't know. So in your particular case, I mean, there's some things that you don't know you need to figure out about when to transition, how to transition, all those different parts. And then even your children or the people that you're going to bring involved, there are things that they don't know. There are things that they don't know that they don't even know. And this is where the learning has to happen, and you need to go out and read and research and expose yourself to new ideas, new concepts, new information. There's a variety of different resources, things like the internet, books, videos, television. Those are all places that can expose you to different things and help you get out of this unconscious incompetence spot. Because you can't do it by yourself.
Right.
You don't know, right? But once you understand something else, once you hear of a new idea, once you hear of a new system, hear of a new process, you instantly transport over to this thing called conscious incompetence. Now, conscious incompetence means that you know something exists, but you don't know how to do it. Well, the good news here is that now you're in control. You have the ability to decide to take the next steps and figure out something else, right? And so you didn't know anything necessarily about maybe transitioning your business to your family, but you've started taking those steps and you're learning. And so in many cases, maybe you're consciously incompetent. Or if you've learned how to do certain things, you mentioned that your daughter's helping you with some of the financials and some of the books, then you can transition it over to somebody else. And that's a place called conscious competence. Right? Conscious competence means you know how to do it, but maybe you're not an expert. Maybe you're not really, really good. Depending on whether you want to spend the time and the energy to become an expert or become really highly proficient, you could spend lots and lots of time, but it really comes down to feedback and practice that allows you to move to the next level of unconscious incompetence, or unconscious competence, I'm sorry. And really that's a level of proficiency, whatever level of proficiency you have. So you have your daughter and you have your kids that are in various places on this line as far as moving in towards growing your business or moving into your business to help manage it. You have you on this curve in the sense that you're learning how to transition and when to transition, right? And so we're all on this curve.
And my wife as well.
And your wife,
yeah,
right? So and sort of anybody and everybody that's connected
right.
to the business. So I'm going to take this information here and show you this thing called the stack, right? And in between those two things, I think we could maybe come up with some different ideas, have a discussion, and talk about how could we apply some of this information to figure out what maybe a couple of 2 or 3, we always try to get 3 action items, 3 things that would allow you to move your business forward in this transition model, maybe in this succession planning model, right? So we'll talk about the stack. And the stack is simply a triangle. It starts at the bottom and is clarity, right? What am I doing? When am I going to do it? Who's going to do it with me? Where am I going? That's what clarity is really all about. It's products, services, people, understanding all those components, really important, and it's the foundation of your business. And we take a look at effectiveness. Once we understand clarity, and we understand clarity to a large degree, now there's no such thing as 100% or perfection, but we go towards effectiveness because whatever we do, we have to do it well and we have to do it right. Once we understand how to do it well and how to do it right, we can go into growth. We can go into this thing called marketing, and we can expand and we can go out. And you've done some things obviously from a business standpoint, but I suspect there are things in here that you're learning. You're in those spaces in your transition activities.
Never stop learning, John.
You never stop learning. It never stops. You're absolutely right. So once we get into marketing, now we can talk about sales, right? So now we end up, how do we find the marketing, the growth piece is how do we find people that are interested in our products and services? The sales part is how do we convince them or convert them into customers, right? And then ultimately we have this thing called leadership. And leadership is really all about managing your team, managing yourself. It starts with yourself, self-discipline, self-leadership, and then it comes to managing your team. And then ultimately it is you may have to manage suppliers, vendors, everything else, because that's it. That you have to control the whole, or you have to manage the whole chain effectively to achieve the goals and successes that you're looking for.
That's a good word, John, because you can't control much in life.
Right. So yeah, control. You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So thank you for that.
Only ourselves.
Yeah, that's it. All I control is what it is
right.
that I do.
Right.
And there's so much learning that's gone on in my lifetime about that. Like, oh yeah, that's right. That's not in my control. So understanding the 4 stages of learning and these categories of learning, how do you think that applies? So if you're thinking about transitioning to your daughter or to somebody else and trying to figure out when and where this is going to happen, how does that apply to you? What is that? Any insights there?
Well, the desire is to get all the family involved, and behind this effort to help transition the business, so that it might succeed and they might be enriched as we have by the benefits of that business. So So I try to have a family meeting at least once a year to update them and to keep them advised of the financial. There's 2 corporations we run, the financial conditions of the companies, and basically have books to back them up with all the information that they can get to if something happens. Obviously, time is a consideration, just trying to get people together, but usually if you buy them all dinner, you can do it.
So you've got that going, right? So what do you think is the next step in your transition activity?
Well, it's for me to be more focused in the details and managing the how it's going to be done.
Okay.
And deciding the different roles for the different family members and how they fit in best, and sharing that roles, and if they can share and work with each other within that parameter, because that's the most important thing to us. If that they all work together and enjoy the benefits of the business, and all contribute and all enjoy each other's contribution of the business, whatever is selected for them.
So what are you going to do? How are you going to be more focused? Do you have to? How are you going to do that?
Well, that's I think about that a lot, John. It's very important to us, my wife and I, that we accomplish that. We don't when we do pass either from physically unable to operate the business or we pass away, we want to make sure that there's a clear message and a clear plan for them to continue, and that they will do it as a family, and they will do it together, and they will enjoy working with each other as a result.
So building the plan, you need to be able to focus,
yes.
And then you need to be able to plan, and then at some point we need to execute the plan.
Yes.
Right? So, well, I think those 3 things are some pretty solid action items. What is it that you could do next week that would help you begin to focus, right, which is your first step there?
Well, since all of our family are successful in doing things that in other ways and have careers in other things, obviously we have to do it piece by piece, and we have to take whatever time we have available and trying to pick areas which we can, because we can't load it on any one person or any one family. We want to try to divide up so that they don't have to sacrifice a lot of time, but they can each learn a piece of my business. So what I've done with my oldest daughter, she can do order entry. She doesn't work. She's the one person that doesn't, of my 6 family adults, so she's the only one that doesn't have a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
So she's agreed to do that. She's been doing that for 2 years. Getting my son-in-law try to help me with the financial aspects.
I'm going to back you up, because the question was, what can you do next week? What can you do next week to help you become more focused on building the plan and building the strategy?
Well, next week, my plan is to meet. I've selected a accountant, which is the first time I've had somebody that could work with QuickBooks and work with me in Huntington Beach. And I just hired him about 6 months ago, and I've introduced all my family members to them, and I'm trying to get them to have a relation, each one of them, so that they can work with him, and so he can be the center of the kind of the control of the financial
financials
as a financial place.
Okay.
So as they learn each operations, they can learn to work with him, and he can help train them in making sure they're doing making good financial decisions and doing it according to correct accounting measures and with the capital that's available to them.
What else can you do next week to kind of move the financial side? What's the next thing? And I'm just wondering if you shouldn't just set up some time next week and say, hey, listen, this is an hour or half an hour or whatever else that I'm going to spend just starting to lay out this plan.
Yeah. And that is a challenge, because time is the most important asset we have.
Right.
And spending your time and making decisions how to spend those time while doing some of the things you like to do and at this age of your life like to enjoy. So next week, I think, just after spending about a week in the hospital doing not much of my business, we have to get back to finding roles that they can actually materially assume on this business, and what roles they specifically can do, especially for the other members of family.
Have you defined all the roles that you need or that you want?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go look and see
how they can fit in with the time that they have available to spend on that time, and that they have time to be trained to do that.
So would putting a draft together next week, is that something that's possible?
I don't think I can do it next week, but I think before the end of the year would probably be a good thing to do.
Okay.
Because I do have a written plan in place, but it's obsolete that I did several years ago.
Right.
Which has changed because of the changes occurred within the dynamics of our family and the businesses.
What else is out there? You've got to build the plan and success. Do you know timing-wise, when would you like to? Now I know that you'd like to have it done before the end, but when would you? If you could pick a time, when would you do it?
I'd say to have a plan before the end of the year, specifically how the family can be involved in learning each aspect of the business and whether it fits their time, and they also have to enjoy doing it. Look forward to doing it, and not to be a chore.
When would you like to be able to step away? Not that you have to step away, but when would you like to be able to step away?
I enjoy this so much, it's hard
Choice.
for me to ever consider as long as my mind is able to. And my mind is greatly diminished from what it was used
Yeah.
to be. I recognize that every day. Sometimes I lose track, as my family understands. I will forget things and do things. So it's at 76 years old, you can't do what you could do at 50.
But you want to get to the point where, even if something stupid happened, it's all covered, right? So you kind of got to sit there and say, hey, listen, I can't do this. You wouldn't expect to do this when you're 100 or 90. So when would you want to have this thing in place so that if something happened or if you wanted to step away, you could, and you're covered. It's all done.
I'd want to have it in place, fully in place, within 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. Okay.
Because I consider myself perfectly able to continue to do it, but I have to take time to not only do it, but train other people to do it as well, which takes more time.
Right. No, I understand it. And so if you sit there and say, hey, listen, 3 years out, we could back up and say, look, what are the things that I need to do and when? But that'll put in place any type of scheduling or urgency that needs to happen.
The big thing I was happy to be able to do is to get this new financial person who is well trained in QuickBooks, who can set a better set of books and financial information I never had before. Mm-hmm. It was kind of sloppy, and really, I understood it, but no one else could.
Well, and so now it's in a much better position to be able to transition.
And
right?
that's transition, and hopefully by the end of this year, we will have that in place. You have to know where you are financially before you can ever train someone else to do it.
Oh, you have to know how it works before you could train them,
Right.
and we don't expect anybody else to do it exactly like us. At least I don't. I'm the only one that thinks like I do. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good, but I'm the only one that does, and so we have to put those systems and processes in place so somebody else could do it. So we've kind of talked a little bit about focus and planning and timing as to when you want to do this kind of thing. So you kind of got a little bit of a roadmap as to how you want to do that. Before we end the show, I want you to share, if you don't mind, kind of the 3 biggest insights that you've gained in your business career. What are the things that the audience should know?
Well, I think that the most important thing I've learned is that some of the things, the opportunities I've had in business is because I've been alert to what's happening within the customer base I was serving. As a salesman for Ingersoll Rand, I became acquainted with a marketplace which I've continuously now served for almost 50 years. And when customers have a problem or they have something that's bothering them, you should really pay close attention on how you can help them solve it, not just continue to sell them product. To be involved in their business and to be more consultative and take the time to learn and to come up with ways you can help them without just continue to sell and
without just thinking about the money.
Not just thinking about the money.
Right. There's more to it than money. If you're doing the right things, the money will happen.
Absolutely. You have to enjoy what you do. You have to make sure your customers benefit by it, and the joy you get out of life is having your customers not only pay you for doing it a fair amount, is to have them enjoy you serving them and see a great benefit to that, because they have a choice to go somewhere else every day.
Yeah. So passion and service.
Absolutely.
That's great. What was the other 2 things that we talked about earlier?
Well, I think that as we were talking before, John, it's the balance in life. If you can be successful in business, and if that's the only thing you do well and you make a lot of money, that certainly is not the answer to joy in life. You've heard about the cycle of life, the 5 spokes of a wheel.
Yeah, in fact, it's a part of my coaching practice.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it is. And I focus obviously on business and career. That's my coaching practice. But financial independence, health, family, spiritual, those are all things that if they're out of whack, from my perspective, they could tank a business in a heartbeat.
And I've seen it happen time and time again.
So balance.
And just the passion to make money, if it becomes the whole reason, you will make mistakes and you will abuse your customer trust, and you will, as Volkswagen is now finding today,
the opportunity rears its head.
You see it all the time.
Yeah.
How can smart people ever do some of the stupid things they do?
Yeah.
They cannot have a sense of family, of families they serve. They can't have a sense of spirituality and doing the right thing and being of service to mankind. And they certainly can't understand what it's going to mean to their family when they get caught.
And there was a third thing that we were chatting about, because the first one was passion and service, and then balance.
Well, I think that financially,
paying attention.
You have to pay attention to. Made a lot of mistakes, situations that you have, and I started with no money in the bank, so I was kind of foolish. And I remember when I told the people from Ingersoll Rand I wanted to become a distributor, and I gave them a business plan, which was pathetic, as I now know.
Well, it was the first opportunity.
And they say, well, where's your capital? He says, well, I'm going to work for nothing, and my wife is going to teach and help me. And they almost laughed me out of the room. But that's basically, at that time they had no other choice because I was working cheap. So they took a flyer on me.
Free is really cheap, but being able to so
I had to learn a lot of things since then.
You're a service guy, you're a people guy, you like to get out in front and talk to people. Digging into the books and the financials, probably not your favorite thing to do.
But I had to learn them. You cannot depend on someone else to know. You're making decisions that could borrowing money and to spending money and to allocating the resources and the sales you are to your employees. You have to understand what you're doing and be on top of that. You cannot let anyone else make those decisions for you, and you have to understand them, and you have to be aware of getting out of balance and doing something that's it can destroy your business very easily. I've seen it happen.
So great advice, and that's part of why we do this show, is so that we can share with the audience things like that. So passion and service, balance, and then be aware and actually intimately aware of your financials,
right.
Your financial status.
Right.
So, Gray, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Before we say goodbye, what do you think? How's this experience been, being on the show? What do you think?
Well, one of the biggest things I enjoy in life is people have come to me and ask about my business experience or asking for advice. And I think it's one of the greatest privileges to be able to help anybody. If I can help anybody, I don't know if I can or not, but if I can help anybody with the experience I've had, avoid the mistakes I've made, or benefit from some of the things I see as important, I consider that a great privilege in life to be able to do it, because to help your fellow man and to help them in any way you can is what makes life enjoyable.
And with the the process we went through with the questionnaire, and then ultimately the questions, and then the power principles and things like that, any thoughts there?
I think you're wonderful, and John, from some of my experience, I had a failed business trying to do what you're doing today, so I admire what you're able to do, and because I wasn't prepared to do it at age 28 years old, so I admire what you're doing. I think it's a great benefit, and everyone hopefully will listen to you, and if they have the opportunity to get involved with you, I'm sure you'll be a great benefit to them.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on
You're
the show.
welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, and we'll see you next week. To be a guest on the show, contact us at BusinessWhitt.com or send us an email. Filmed at John Witt Enterprises, 2 Park Plaza, Irvine, California.